All right, today we're going to tackle one of the biggest and honestly most counterintuitive barriers to high performance. It's this thing that we all do to protect ourselves, but what if it's the very thing holding us back? Let's dive in.
Okay, so researcher Brené Brown hits us with this powerful idea. See, she used to think the opposite of courage was, fear. Makes sense, right? But then she interviewed some of the bravest people on the planet. We're talking CEOs, special forces, you name it. And she realized they were afraid all the time. So the real barrier to courage isn't the fear itself. It's what we do when we feel that fear.
So that just naturally leads to two huge questions, right? First, what exactly is this armor we're all supposedly wearing? And maybe even more important, what's it costing us?
And to answer that, we really have to get our heads around this central paradox. Our natural instinct to protect ourselves, that's often the exact thing that stops us from being truly brave and, hitting our full potential. So what is it? Well, Brown defines armor as all those behaviors we just automatically default to when we feel vulnerable or scared. Think of it like our self-protection software, just kicking in the second it senses a threat. And look, we all have our own personal go-tos, right? Our own arsenal of armor. And the tricky thing is, a lot of these behaviors look totally normal. Heck, they can even look like strengths. Maybe for you as a leader, it's micromanaging when a project starts to feel like it's going off the rails. Or maybe it's that perfectionism kicking into overdrive. These are just our go-to moves to feel safe. And this is where it gets really interesting, because even something that looks like a total strength can be a form of armor. Brown tells this amazing personal story about how her coach called her out. He pointed out that her famous decisiveness, well, sometimes it was just her way of running away from the discomfort of uncertainty. If she just made a snap decision, she didn't have to sit in that messy, vulnerable space of not knowing the answer. Okay, so we've got a handle on what armor is, but wearing it, man, it comes at a huge cost. It completely shifts our mindset. We're no longer playing to win, we're just playing not to lose. Brown has this killer analogy from the Super Bowl. Just picture it. You're listening in on two different team sidelines. The team that's playing to win, their talk is all about trust, resilience, we got this, back to basics. But the team that's playing not to lose, they're just trapped in this toxic loop of blame, second-guessing, and negativity. Why'd you do that? That second sideline, that is the sound of armor. So if this armor is what's holding us back, the obvious question is, how do we take it off? And the answer, it turns out, is to step right into what Brown calls the messy middle. It's that challenging, super uncomfortable, but totally essential space where all the real transformation actually happens. And here's the absolute key. You cannot get through the messy middle unless you are willing to break things. I mean, really break what isn't working. Real transformation isn't about little tweaks here and there. It takes guts. It's about dismantling old systems, old habits, old ways of thinking. And if you want a jaw-dropping, real-world example of this, look no further than the insane, high-stakes world of Formula One. When a guy named James Voles took over the struggling Williams racing team, this was his order. Not make some small improvements, it was tear it all down. He was told to build something totally new, even if it meant they were going to lose and lose badly in the short term. And get this, here's the crazy full circle moment. You know who uses this exact story about James Voles and her own leadership training? Brené Brown. She points to this as the perfect living example of what it means to get into that messy middle and lead a real, honest-to-God transformation.
All right, so let's really get into this case study. How did this break-everything philosophy actually play out? I mean, how do you go from that to building a winning culture?
So, Voles explains that the culture he helped create at Mercedes and the one he's building now at Williams runs on this no fear of failure loop. First, it all starts with data. Then, and this is big, you have to embrace failure. See it not as a mistake, but as a chance to learn. Then you analyze it, figure out what went wrong, and just as importantly, what went right. And then, and this is the absolute game changer, you have to proactively take those lessons and apply them everywhere else to stop the same kind of failure from happening again. And you want to know how real this was? James Voles himself gets on the team radio in front of something like 60 million people and says, "I have thrown away the win today." Just think about that. In the old armored-up F1 culture, that's a firing offense, period. But in this new culture, that was a profound act of leadership. And this just snaps us right back to the central idea. Like Brené Brown says, this isn't about creating some nice, fluffy culture. No, this is about performance. A a culture where people trust each other enough to be vulnerable and learn from failure, that culture will absolutely outperform everyone else. It is a straight-up competitive advantage.
Okay, so we're convinced. We need to take off the armor. But that leads to a pretty scary question, doesn't it? What do we replace it with? I mean, you can't just walk into a big challenge totally unprotected. The answer is you build a new toolkit.
And this right here is the whole key. Taking off your armor doesn't mean you go in naked. It's about replacing that clumsy, heavy, clanking protection with something way more effective: actual skill. Specifically, a set of skills that Brené Brown calls grounded confidence.
So, what's the first skill in that toolkit? It's self-awareness. Hands down the most important one. It's just the ability to recognize right in the heat of the moment when you're reacting from fear, when fear has literally grabbed the steering wheel from you.
And a really powerful tool for this is something called the above and below the line framework. It's simple. The line is fear. When you're below the line, fear is in the driver's seat. And you fall into these really unhelpful roles, right? The victim. Ugh, why is this happening to me? The villain. This is all your fault. Or the hero. Fine, whatever, I'll just do it myself. Sound familiar? But when you're above the line, you feel the fear, but you are still driving. And from there, you can choose much more productive roles, like the coach, the co-creator, or the challenger. And that's what leads to real learning, innovation, and trust.
So, when we boil it all down, what we're really talking about is a totally new definition of what it means to be strong. True high performance isn't about being fearless. It's about having the self-awareness to see your fear, having the skills to handle it, and then having the courage to show up and lead anyway, without hiding behind all that armor.
So we'll leave you with this thought. We all have our armor. And you know what? It's heavy, and it's holding you back. So the real question isn't if you're wearing it, but what are you going to build to replace it? What skills, what practices, what new ways of showing up are you going to forge to take its place?